A survivor of the Nomzamo Tavern massacre in Soweto says he's fearing for his life. You'll remember the July shooting left 15 people dead. Gauteng Premier David Makhura says some of the suspects are in a neighbouring country and police are trying to get them returned to South Africa to face the law. eNCA Silindelo Masikane has been following the story and she joins me now. Slee, good evening. You went back to Nomzamo today. Tell us what you saw and who you spoke to.
Yeah, we went back to Nomzamo this morning, Sally, and you would remember that this massacre really took place around the 10th of July. So it's been a couple of weeks since that tragedy. And what we observed with my colleague Joel Matlala was just how quiet the township has really become, but also the fact that community members have seemingly, of course, not forgotten about that tragedy and are asking themselves exactly what is happening with police investigations. They're not getting regular updates in terms of whether there's any possibility of suspects being apprehended. I had an opportunity to speak to neighbors who are directly next to that particular tavern, and they were also recounting what they saw on that particular evening, how they did notice the quantum that had the suspects that fired all those AK-47s. And they were saying to me that the community, of course, is still quite fearful because of the fact that there have not been any arrests yet. But what I also observed, Sally, is the fact that the tavern has not reopened. And from what I'm hearing from community members, the tavern owner himself has not returned to the area. But we had an opportunity to speak to one of the survivors, one of the few survivors of that horrific attack. Let's take a listen to what he had to say in terms of what he remembers about that evening, but just how grateful he is to be alive.
Ngisinde ngoNkulunkulu because nabo labantu laba babezodubula lapha abantu ekubonakala kahle ukuthi babengayazi le ndawo. Azange baqala bazo inspector kuqala ukuthi yindawo enjani, abantu bahlala kanjani kanjani. Bona babona nje abantu abaninzi ngaphandle babaleka, abanye bathi nabengena ngaphakathi babadubula babe sebebona laba babaleka beza kulicango lumnyama ukuthi kusho ukuthi yiyona asesiyokuphuma la. So bona bebedubula ngendlela babecabangela ukuthi noba igarage yemoto lena yibona. So thina njengoba sihleli ngapha ke sine indlela yokuthi sibukele iTV, sihleli lama-bench, savele ngena ngapha kwawo ama-bench sazilalela khona kwabe kukusinda kwethu ke lo.
Yeah, and I'm presuming he didn't want to be identified because he's concerned that as a witness he may become a target. It's really interesting what he says there, that the shooters didn't know the bar very well at all, which fits in with this new piece of information we're getting, that some of the suspects have fled the country. What is this new information? Tell us all about it.
Well, this information, Sally, we got from the Gauteng legislature sitting yesterday, in fact, where the Premier gave an address and an update in terms of law enforcement's involvement in the apprehension, as well as the number of criminal activities taking place in Gauteng, in particular the tavern shootings. You would remember that we had a couple that took place last month, resulting in more than 30 people who were either injured or fatally lost their lives. And so in that particular sitting, Sally, we got more detail in terms of the fact that it seems law enforcement has identified the fact that these suspects are former SAPS or former police rather, and defense force members from their particular countries. The suggestions are the fact that there's a possibility that they could be from Lesotho, and that authorities are now speaking to their counterparts to try and get them back into the country to face the full might of the law. So it does seem as though that they managed to escape, but there are efforts that are being made to try and bring them back. We had an opportunity then to speak to an expert in terms of what is the possibility of being able to actually extradite the suspects. Let's take a listen.
We know that in SADC there are quite good extradition treaties, so they might be quite, there might be chances that we will see them coming back. I think everybody has been quite hesitant to make links between these shootings. What we do know is that most of these shootings are motivated by group interests.
It's quite interesting, this information, because initially the police believe the suspects could have been from KwaZulu-Natal. So it seems that the focus of the investigations have shifted. Have you been able to speak to the police?
Well, we attempted to speak to them this morning as well, Sally, but we were told that due to the sensitive nature of the investigations and fears of jeopardizing the case, that the police would not be releasing any information. But we will be trying later on in the week to try and possibly doorstop the police commissioner, and probably we can get some more detail as to how far these investigations are. But what experts are saying is that you will find that police will not really try and say much in these kinds of investigations, because their sole mandate really is to try and apprehend suspects and bring them before the courts. Whereas in terms of Premier David Makhura, as a politician, of course, he is then mandated to kind of give those kinds of updates to the public, and in particular the legislature, which is why we were able to get some more information as to who these suspects could possibly be.
Yeah, all of it is going to be complicated, of course, if they have to move into an extradition process. Thank you so much for that update. That is Silindelo Masikane.